Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. He returns from war and finds his daughter in a pigsty. His reaction shocks the nation. A light snow fell on the Missouri plains that morning, in an almost sacred silence. The landscape was frozen, as if suspended in time, covered in a white veil that softened the shapes of the hills, erased tracks, and muffled the slightest sound. The fields were asleep, the bare trees stretched their icy arms toward a low, gray sky. In the distance, an old man-beige military bus, battered by the miles, purred in the cold. It slowed to a screeching halt before stopping at the edge of a half-frozen dirt road. There was no sign, no gas station, just a dented mailbox and a leaning old utility pole. The bus door opened with a sigh. A single man got off. William Carter. He was still wearing his uniform. A threadbare army bag slung over his shoulder, his heavy boots caked in frozen mud, his worn coat buttoned to the collar. His face was dry, marked by fatigue, war, and the weight of memories. His U.S. Army cap shaded his eyes, which shone with a strange light, a mixture of hope, fear, relief, and tension. He stood there for a moment, motionless in the snow, staring at the house at the end of the path. An old farmhouse with drooping shutters, peeling paint, and wooden walls worn by winters and summers past. His childhood home. The place he had rebuilt for his family with his own hands, board by board, after leaving the trenches of the Middle East. Where he had mourned Amanda, his wife, after that stupid and cruel car accident. Where he had promised his daughter, Emily, he would return. Always. He took a deep breath, and started walking. His footsteps crunched in the snow. Every meter brought him closer to what he hoped would be a return to normal life. Each step carried anticipation, Emily's laughter as she opened the door, her voice crying, "Daddy," as she ran into his arms, the smell of hot chocolate in the kitchen, maybe even a Christmas tree set up in the living room if he was lucky. But as soon as he set foot on the steps of the old family home, a chilling shiver of alarm ran down his spine. It was as if the wood beneath his boots had changed texture, as if he could feel something unnatural in its fibers. The silence was not peaceful, he was empty, deaf, hostile. He reached for the handle, the paint peeling, but didn't need to force it. The front door was ajar. William pushed slowly, cautiously, as if entering an abandoned area. A metallic whine escaped the tired hinges. What he saw chilled him more than snow. The interior of the house seemed to have been frozen in time, or unceremoniously abandoned. And biting cold had taken over the place, as if no human warmth had passed through these walls for weeks. Cobwebs stretched like neglected curtains in the corners of the ceiling. A thin layer of gray dust-covered furniture, shelves, frames, even the one where he posed with Amanda and Emily at a summer picnic 3 years earlier. The fireplace was empty. The wood in the basket looked moldy. The fridge hummed faintly, but there was no trace of life. No teenage shoes near the doormat. No coat on the hook rack. No school bags carelessly thrown in the entrance. And above all, no drawings taped to the fridge, the ones Emily made for him every time he came back from a mission, with the clumsy words, "My hero, Dad." He felt a lump rise in his throat. "Emily," he called louder, his voice strangled. "It's Dad. I'm home." Silence. Not even the echo of his words. Just the whine of the wind through a poorly closed window. Then his instinct took over. He left the bag on the ground and rushed towards the stairs. His boots clattered on the wooden steps. He took them 2 at a time, each step heavier than the last. Emily's room. He opened the door with a gesture, vide. The bed long since unmade, the sheets wrinkled, the mattress bare. The walls, once decorated with posters of animals and constellations, were bare. The open drawers, as if hastily searched. No more clothes. No more stuffed animals. The floor was covered in a film of dust, as if no one had set foot on it for months. He rushed to the bathroom. Nothing. Then the guest room. Nothing. The basement. Nothing. He stormed back downstairs, his feet hitting the stairs like thunderclaps. He opened the kitchen cupboards, one by one, like opening coffins, nervously, desperately. Veed. Not a can of food. Not a dirty plate. Not a crumb of life. He stepped back, leaning his hands on the counter, panting. Where was she? It was then, in the frozen silence, that he heard a dull noise. Distant. Almost suffocating. An growl, or a moan. Then a second. Coming from outside. His heart leaped. He rushed outside, without taking his coat, ignoring the chill that whipped at him. The snow was falling harder, sweeping across the landscape like a blinding veil. He ran toward the back of the yard, skirting the barn, his breath forming great trails of mist. And there, at the foot of the old wormy wooden pigsty, he stopped dead. The noise was coming from there. An animal breath, and a human sigh. He placed his hand on the handle of the old pigsty. The metal, icy and covered in rust, creaked beneath his fingers. For a second, he hesitated. His heart was beating so hard it pounded in his temples. The smell of mold and urine was already rising through the cracks in the boards. Then, with a sudden movement, he pushed the door open. A hot, nauseating, acidic breath immediately assailed him. A mixture of rotten straw, animal excrement, wet wood, and something else. A human smell. Misery, sweat, fear. A smell he knew well, having smelled it on refugees in war zones. But he would never have imagined smelling it here at his house. Inside, the light was gray, faint, filtered through a slit skylight. Dust hung in the air like suspended specters. He took a step forward, the ground crunching beneath his boots, puddles of mud mixed with the residue of pig urine splashing onto his trousers. And that's where he saw her. Emily. Lying on an old, soiled straw mat, curled up against the back wall like a wounded animal. She barely moved. An old, oversized sweatshirt was slipping off her shoulder. Her jeans were ripped at the knee. Her legs were thin, covered in dirt, her arms mottled with purple bruises. Her face. God. His left eye was swollen, barely half open, and his cracked, split lower lip bore the old traces of a blow. Sun face was gray with dirt, her hair matted, stuck to her forehead. A piece of dry bread lay beside her, gnawed by rats. Around her, some empty tin cans, some still open, rusty. In a corner, an old pig was dozing, lying on a pile of rubbish, indifferent. But what broke William's heart was his eyes. When she slowly raised her head towards him, his gaze expressed neither surprise nor panic, but resignation. As if, in her mind, she had prepared herself to die there, and one more man entering that pigsty could only be a dream, or another ghost. Then their eyes met. And, slowly, very slowly, a tiny spark appeared in his own. A flame. A question. She barely opened her mouth. Her voice was hoarse, broken. Father. William stopped dead in his tracks. His breath caught. He staggered as if he'd just been shot in the chest. He fell to his knees in the mud without thinking. His hands were shaking. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he held them back. Not yet. Not now. My baby, my God, what have they done to you? Her voice broke. It was a whisper, almost a prayer. He opened his arms slowly, as if holding out an offering, or approaching a frightened animal. He didn't dare take another step. He didn't want to frighten it. But she moved. She gave a small moan and, despite the obvious pain, crawled to him. She threw herself against his chest, with all the energy he had left. And there, the whole world collapsed around them. He held her tight. Too tight. He could feel her bones through her sweatshirt. She was shaking like a leaf. She was cold. She was hungry. She was scared. And now she was crying, her sobs rippling against his chest, her face buried in his military coat. You're here, you're back, she repeated over and over, like a mantra. And William, broken, rocked her in silence, in that filthy pigsty, amidst excrement, mud, and lost memories. His soldier's uniform was soaked with tears and dirt, but he didn't care. He had held firm in the war. But here, in this barn, he was crumbling inside. They stayed there, on the ground, a long time. Two wounded souls. A father who fought for peace at the ends of the earth. And a girl who had fought to survive, alone, a few meters from her own home. United again. By pain. And by love. What William discovered next chilled his blood, with a coldness far crueler than the snow that continued to fall outside. When he finally managed to warm Emily, wrapped in a clean blanket, on the sofa near a fire he lit while trembling, she said little. But her silences were more eloquent than 1,000 cries, and every fragment she let slip opened a new wound in her father's heart. He quickly understood that everything he thought was safe had collapsed in his absence. Before leaving on his mission, he had everything ready. He had stocked the freezer, paid the bills in advance, arranged for Emily's medical care, contacted her school, established a clear routine, and entrusted his daughter to someone he trusted, his sister-in-law, Karen McNeely. Amanda's sister, Karen, had cried at the funeral. She had promised, hand on heart, to protect Emily as if she were her own daughter. She had even posted a photo of herself and Emily on Facebook with the caption, "She's not alone as long as I'm here." But this promise only lasted 3 months. 3 months. Then a man entered Karen's life. A salesman with an easy smile and dreams of sunshine. He lured her away from here, to California, selling her the promise of a new life. And she left, without a word. Without warning. Without leaving an address. She had left the house, left the keys, left Emily. As if a 13-year-old girl could survive alone, in the open countryside, in the middle of winter. William couldn't believe it. He rummaged through the mailbox, unopened bills, piles of school letters, unread social services letters. He called the school. No one had reported Emily's extended absence, thinking she had moved. The system had classified his file as family transfer. Social services, overwhelmed, never came to check. The neighbors? They had seen the light go out, then the house fall asleep. None of them had suspected that a child still lived there. No one had cared about her. Emily, for her part, hadn't said anything to anyone. She was scared. Fear of being placed in foster care. Fear of being sent far away. Fear of never seeing her father again. So, she had learned to survive. For the first few days, she had slept in her room, living on leftovers from the freezer. Then the electricity had gone out. No more light. No more heat. Then the water. She had been hungry. Terribly hungry. She had started stealing eggs from the neighboring chicken coops. She rummaged through the trash cans at the small gas station 2 kilometers away, slipping between the shadows. She drank rainwater, sometimes water from the drinking troughs. And when it was too cold, she slept in the filth, huddled against the warm body of an old pig. She had given him a name, Captain. She had sewn a blanket from old clothes. She had improvised a lamp with a candle and a jar. She was reading, by the flickering light, an old book her mother had given her, Treasure Island. But the worst thing wasn't the hunger. Nor the cold. It was lonely. She had crossed off a box on the calendar, every day, in chalk, on the wall of the pigsty. A line for every morning. A line for each evening. And every day, she whispered the same thing, her forehead against the wooden board. Dad will come back. He promised me. She had never stopped believing in it. Not for a single day. Even when she couldn't feel her fingers anymore. Even when his bones ached in the night. Even when tears froze on her cheeks. Because that was all she had. Hope. The thought that her father would come. That he, at least, would never abandon her. And he came back. Listening to him, William felt himself dying inside. He wanted to scream, break all the furniture in the house, hit something. But he could only listen to him, and hold her close. Again. Always. He gently stroked her tangled hair and swore to her, in a trembling but firm voice. Never again. Do you hear me, Emily? You'll never be alone again. And for the first time, she thought she could believe it. Many in the town expected an explosive reaction. After all, William Hayes was a veteran, a man of action, a soldier returned from 3 tours of duty, decorated for bravery. They thought he would press charges. He would take Karen to court. He would accuse the school of negligence. He would rant, he would hit, he would shout. But William did something else. Something no one could have predicted. A week after finding Emily in the pig pen, he summoned the local press, school district officials, county social workers, and city hall officials. Even the sheriff was asked to attend. He sent only one deputy, too embarrassed to come in person. The neighbors were there too, curious, uncomfortable. Some looked down. Others whispered among themselves. William gathered them all in the frozen farmyard, in front of the old pigsty. He didn't speak to them from a lectern. He didn't stand on a platform. He stood in the mud, his army boots still covered in slush, his daughter huddled against him, now clean, wrapped in a coat that was too big for her. He slowly lifted a photo printed on stiff cardboard. A photo of Emily, taken 6 days earlier. Her swollen face. The moldy straw. The cold visible in the mist of her breath. Her gaze, both frightened and full of fragile hope. A shudder ran through the crowd. Then, in a deep voice, William spoke. I went to defend my country. I went to protect other children, in other lands, against enemies I did not know. He paused, looked at the faces in front of him. But my daughter, she was forgotten here. At home. By you. Not by terrorists. Not by war. By indifference. He pointed at the pigsty, his voice breaking slightly. She slept in there. For 2 months. 300 meters from your heated homes. You saw her disappear. And you said nothing. The school didn't call. Social services didn't check. Not a single neighbor wondered why a little girl never went out anymore. The silence was total. We could hear crows calling in the distance, the wind shaking the branches. William straightened. His face was calm, but his eyes shone with controlled anger. I am thanked for my service. I am decorated. I am applauded. But today, I ask you the same question. Where were you while my daughter ate leftovers, rummaged through garbage cans, slept on straw with animals? Where were you while she survived, alone, with only one comfort, a phrase she repeated every morning, Dad will come back? Tears streamed down a teacher's cheeks. A neighbor, a trembling hand over her mouth, took a step back. The school principal clutched his folder to his chest, frozen. It's not an accusation. It's a reminder. The enemy, sometimes, isn't the one who attacks. It's the one who looks the other way. He finally lowered the photo. Then hugged Emily tighter. She survived. Not because of you. Despite you. And without another word, he turned on his heel and went home. Behind him, a heavy silence. And, for many, a rude awakening. After the intense emotion of that fateful week, William made a radical decision that surprised those around him. He left the army. Not because he had lost his calling, but because he now understood that his greatest battle was being fought here at home, on this frozen Missouri farm. Far from the trenches and distant battles, this was where he belonged. This was where he was to mend what had been broken. He emptied his savings accounts, sold some personal belongings, and went to work. He spent hours in the old barn cleaning the pigsty where he had found Emily, pulling out the soiled straw, carefully disinfecting every corner. He brought in a craftsman to repair the roof, insulate the walls, and replace the windows. The house, which had been deserted by time and neglect, began to come back to life. The furniture was simple and modest, but each room regained its warmth. He installed a wood-burning stove in the living room, repaired the creaky floorboards, and repainted the walls in soft, bright colors. He created a bedroom for Emily, with a new bed, a light-colored wooden chest of drawers, and colorful curtains. He hung the drawings his daughter had once made on the wall, and commissioned more. Every morning, William prepared a breakfast for Emily that she looked forward to, star-shaped pancakes, a recipe she had invented, a symbol of the hope they shared. Every night, before putting her to bed, he would repeat to her softly, his voice full of assurance. "You are not alone anymore, and you never will be again." Little by little, Emily regained the smile that had disappeared under the dust and pain. Confidence grew within her, timidly at first, then with the strength of a young woman who refuses to let her past define her. But William didn't want their story to remain a secret. He didn't want anyone to experience what Emily had. He wanted every military child to be protected, even when their parents were far away. This is why he founded, with the help of former comrades and committed volunteers, the Foundation Emily's Hope, an organization dedicated to identifying abandoned or neglected children, protecting them, and providing them with a safe home, educational support, and psychological counseling. The project quickly gained momentum, bringing together thousands of families, associations, and social workers, and even inspiring laws at the federal level. Years later, at 25 years old, Emily Carter, having grown into a strong and determined young woman, took the podium in the U.S. Congress. She had trained in law, choosing to defend the rights of children, raising the voice of those who do not have them. Before the assembly, without tears but with deep pride, she told her story. His gaze swept the audience, his tone calm and clear. "I was born twice. The first time, in a hospital, in the loving arms of my mother. The second time, in a pigsty, curled up in the straw, forgotten by almost everyone." She paused, then continued. "It was there, in that darkness, that my father came looking for me. And that's when I understood something essential, that a father's love can rebuild an entire world." Applause erupted. But for Emily, this wasn't a personal victory. It was a victory for all the children still waiting to be found, protected, and loved.